Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Believers. My guest today is Brother Ali, a rapper known for his honesty, his depth, and his uncompromising voice. And I met Brother Ali online initially. I was posting something on Instagram and he messaged me and he said, I really liked what you posted and it reminded me of a bunch of stuff that I noticed in California. And we had a very interesting back and forth about the Muslim scene in California at the time when he was there. And we've been kind of friends ever since. This is the first time we have an interview together. And Brother Ali's story goes, far beyond music. He was born with albinism and he spent a lot of time being raised, well, obviously at home, but also with black families. And that really shaped his persona growing up. He entered Islam at the age of 15. And at that time, he joined the movement of W.D. Muhammad, and he was with them for quite a while, and around 20 years. 20 years, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I still consider
Yeah.
myself part of that community, but
Okay.
I've studied and pursued study outside of that community, but
Hmm.
I'll always be Imam Worthy Muhammad will always be my guy.
MashaAllah. Did you spend a bit of time with him before he passed away?
Not as much as some others.
Yeah.
His son-in-law was my direct teacher. So
Okay.
his son-in-law, Imam Matthew Ramadan, Allah preserve him, was when I became Muslim, he's the one that gave me my Shahada and my early training. So he had been
Wow.
in the Nation of Islam and then made the transition. And he was the Imam in North Minneapolis at the time that I converted.
When you converted to Islam, were you already a musician?
Yeah, so hip hop is really what led me to Islam. I mean, for
Hmm.
all of it, it all comes together with the fact that like being albino in the 80s in the Midwest was a really alienating kind of thing. Like I really felt like I wasn't going to ever be part of society, like from the time I was a little
Yeah.
kid, from the time I first went to school. And there's just a thing about albinism. There's like a deep link with the African diaspora, just the Black world has more albinism than like albinism exists in everybody, but sub-Saharan Africans, like Black Africans, have like 5 or 7 times more cases. So it's
Hmm.
much more common. It's also more noticeable. And so a lot of Black people, white people, there's this feeling that like albinism is something, is like sickle cell anemia or something, like it's a
Yeah.
Black phenomenon when
Yeah.
it's not necessarily true. But so from the time that I was really young, Black people, albinism was not weird to Black people. Black people know how to take care of albinos, like they know what we need, they understand us.
Hmm.
And in my experience anyway, I was told from the time I was a little kid, like, oh, albinos are Black. Somebody in your family is Black and you're just Black. Even though my parents are like the whitest of white, they grew up in Madison, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
you know.
Have you done
But
a,
that's what I was told, and that was the first
yeah.
time that I ever had, community and friends and relationships, and
Hmm.
yeah. So I
And
and so that
yeah.
that was the thing really that led both to hip hop and to Islam.
Hmm.
So hip hop is four artistic elements, which are the musical production,
Yeah.
which is comes from DJing, the verbal part, the vocal part, which is emceeing, rapping, and then the visual arts or graffiti and movement are what they call breakdancing.
Hmm.
Uh, and then there's a fifth element, which is the knowledge of self. And that was really kind of brought into being, all of this was brought together by a group called the Universal Zulu Nation that started
Hmm.
in the 70s in New York in the Bronx, where my wife is from.
Hmm.
And basically, if you look at those original lessons, they come directly from the Nation of Islam,
Wow.
both under Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X and Minister Farrakhan, but then also the 5% Nation of Islam, which is an offshoot of theirs that happened in the mid 60s.
Hmm.
And so Islam is the unofficial religion of hip hop. And hip hop, I would contest, hip hop is an Islamic art form. Like everywhere that Islam has gone amongst the converts, it bursts forth with poetry and with cultural development. Dr. Omar Farouk
Hmm.
Abdullah has his famous paper called Islam and the Cultural Imperative.
Hmm.
And this happened in China and Pakistan and India and subcontinent and everywhere else that Islam went. And in America, African American people are the first and only people that have had communal conversion to Islam.
Hmm.
That's who Allah gave his religion to first in America in a major, major, major way.
Right.
And the art form that sprung from that, a lot of it was also spiritual jazz. So
Hmm.
within jazz music, there's a particular strain called spiritual jazz that's very influenced by Islam through people like John Coltrane and Art Blakey and Ahmad Jamal and others.
Hmm.
But in our generation, it's hip hop. And you know, hip hop is an Islamic art form. And that's not that's not an opinion that people need to share with me. But it really is that. So all the early hip hop artists, especially the most, virtuous, positive, righteous ones, maybe people that weren't around in that time don't know that there were hip hop artists that were saying like, we've got to respect women and we've got to, be sober and intelligent and we've got to live virtuous lives
Hmm.
and be positive to, and we've got to be close to God. And most of them had some kind of association with Islam. And then very specifically, when I was 13, I met my favorite MC and my favorite rapper was KRS-One.
Yeah.
And I asked a question at a lecture that he gave, and he brought me on stage and he said, "You have to read the autobiography of Malcolm X."
Hmm.
And so, like so many of us, like converts in the West,
Yeah.
that was it. Like you read that auto, but the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, you got to be black to be Muslim. So I'm not allowed to
Yeah.
be Muslim, but I'm going to be just like them. I'll just do what they do, even though I'm
Yeah.
not allowed to join. And then he makes the Hajj and he says, if white people in America would study Islam and practice Islam and be Muslim, it would allow them to become human again
Wow.
and kind of like reprogram the idea of white supremacy, which is a really deeply alienating
Hmm.
way of seeing and being in the world. And so I was like, oh, great. Like, amazing. So I just decided I was Muslim. And then it was later, my mom actually had to search out a masjid in our neighborhood. And she's the one that connected me with Imam Ramadan, who is Imam Warthi Muhammad's son-in-law.
Wow. Did your parents convert to Islam?
No.
It's an ongoing project of yours.
So they both passed away relatively young.
Oh, subhanAllah. Okay.
Um, yeah. So my parent, none of my direct family members have
Wow.
converted.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've been married twice. My first wife is a second generation Muslim. Her mother was in the Nation of Islam.
Hmm.
And then my current wife converted not long after we met. And she
Okay.
actually converted when she met Imam Warthi Muhammad. She decided to be Muslim.
Oh, wow.
Allah have mercy on Imam Muhammad. Yeah.
I mean, did rap music or hip hop become a degenerate art form in certain circles and become something like gangster rap, which wasn't really the ethos of the earlier figures in this movement?
So early on, hip hop comes out of, like I said, jazz and spiritual jazz. It's like the entirety of the Black musical tradition. If you think about how amazing it is that for such for a group of people that has been so tortured and dehumanized and demoralized and stripped of, their names and their history and their any connection to lineage and, directly, I think a lot of people don't know that immediately when slavery was abolished, immediately Black people built thriving communities all across the South.
Hmm.
I mean, they had businesses and universities and were getting elected to public office and, strong families and all this stuff. And white people just came and burned it down,
Hmm.
like quite literally. Like, people have just started to hear about like the Tulsa race riots and things like that, white race riots where they literally bombed an entire business district. But that happened all across the South. So,
Wow.
Black people created, if you think about the modern world and the fact that America's really number one export, along with technology, maybe and some other things, is really culture.
Yeah.
And the culture of America is driven and really the spiritual creative ingenuity of American culture is Black.
Hmm.
So you think the way that rock and roll took over the world. I mean, that's Black music. All of the pop music in the world is Black music. Reggae music, jazz music, disco, dance music, EDM, hip hop, all of these, reggae, all of these are Black American art forms that have just taken over the whole world. And so hip hop really combines all of those because, via sampling and things like that. All of those things are part of the art. And so your question is like, how did it get to the place where it is now? So early on, anybody that was listening to hip hop in the late 70s and through like up until like really the late 80s, hip hop music was just a genuine expression of all different elements of Black community and culture.
Hmm.
So there was music that was really happy and positive, and that would just be about having fun and dancing. It was funny.
Hmm.
Artists like Kid and Play and Heavy D, and just these artists that were just having fun. And
Yeah.
then there was music that was like just lyrically amazing, like
Yeah.
to break down the work of people like Rakim and others. It's like it's really spiritual, amazing
Yeah.
writing from 17-year-old kids. Um, and and then there were also elements that were dealing with sexuality, like Two Live Crew and others. And then there was some street music from people who were living that life. It was a
Hmm.
representation of the whole community.
Yeah.
And then also a lot of the music was really extremely positive messages. And even the most gangster, like, Ice-T is an example of an old school
Hmm.
gangster rapper. His DJ's name was Africa Islam.
Oh, really?
And Ice-T would talk about knowledge and would talk about wisdom and would talk about being righteous and all this stuff. And even when he would tell his street stories, he would always talk about the downside of it and he wasn't glorifying it.
Hmm.
And so in the late 80s, record executives from the broader music industry who are white, who are, Zionist, who are, they basically made the choice that we're going to take this music mainstream, which basically means what version of this can we sell to white America and really to the youth of the world.
Hmm.
And they started to fund music that was violent, that was misogynist, that was hypersexualized, that, celebrated black on black crime and death and violence and drug use and all of
Yeah.
this stuff. So what most people know if you just turn on TV and the radio or go to the top playlists and things like that, people are going to see rap music and it's like, oh, it's negative and it's about
Hmm.
chains and women's body parts and sex and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Those are choices that were made by outsiders. Those were not
Hmm.
that did not come from the original community.
That makes
There's a very
sense.
marked difference, and you know, so that's something that was really the influence of outsiders that came and
Hmm.
chose what would be useful to them.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I was born in 1987, so I'm a little bit younger than you maybe. And the stuff I grew up listening to was already that phase. So I really liked Big Pun. I liked, Notorious B.I.G., Big L. But yeah, their lyrics would be categorized in the kind of not very Islamic friendly anymore. They were great lyricists. They were great rappers. They were great in delivery.
Incredible,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah. There's a guy
yeah,
who's still
incredible.
active who I really like. Papoose?
Of course.
Yeah, like he's amazing, like in what he does. But like,
Yeah, no, I mean just the lyrical dexterity. And and there are stories like liking and appreciating Jahili poetry is from the Sunnah.
right.
So the Prophet ﷺ, there's a story that I heard Sheikh Ibrahim Osiefa, Allah preserve him, tell, where there's one of the Sahabi is riding in a long journey with the Prophet ﷺ, and there
Hmm.
was a poet that I believe his name is Ibn Abi Salt, if I'm not mistaken,
Hmm.
that the Prophet ﷺ loved his poetry, and he was saying to the Sahabi, tell me more. And so he would quote some lines of poetry, and the Prophet ﷺ would say, oh, like he would have a reaction. He'd say, tell me more. And this is a
SubhanAllah.
person who, you know, died never having accepted, like he lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and died not accepting him.
Yeah.
And the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said that his poetry is so amazing that it almost rendered him Muslim.
Wow.
So, appreciating the poetry of Jahiliyyah, people in Jahiliyyah who are not Muslim, from our culture and society, that's a sunnah that is like, who are the poets? The
Yeah.
poets are songwriters and they're rappers. And, if you were to ask any of those artists, would Big Pun or Eminem or, Jay-Z or any of them, would you ever disrespect Islam? Would you ever say something disrespectful of the Quran? They would never do such a thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
If they were to meet a Muslim woman, for example, they would say Salam Alaikum, sister, and they would put their hand on their heart and bow to her a little bit. If they were, if they were to visit with Minister Farrakhan, who's not an Orthodox Muslim, but they're deeply respectful of Islam, and hip hop culture is that way across the board.
Just to go back to Imam Warathin, how did that shift happen from nation to mainstream Islam?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know that Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
Hmm.
he's not the one who created the theology or the organization, the Nation of Islam. That's not a religion that he started or founded. That was a movement that was happening for several years before he joined the movement. That was actually created by a really mysterious figure who had many names. Among his names were Wallace D. Farad,
Hmm.
um, and other names. Uh, and they called it they in that movement he's known as Master Farad. So Master Farad is the one who appeared in the black bottom, like the basically the black neighborhoods in Detroit in the 1930s, where people had never heard of Islam really,
Hmm.
with very, very few exceptions. There's a group called the Moorish Science Temple of America.
Yeah.
There were Ahmadiyas who had started to introduce Islam. Um, but these are people who many of them had been stolen and sold and kidnapped from West Africa, where I mean, there's big families of Ahlul Bayt, there's big families of deep scholarship and in all the Islamic sciences. Like these are the people of Timbuktu and Mali and Shanghai and like these amazing like Islamic
Yeah.
empires. And throughout that process, like that type of slavery was, the same way you have like developments in technology. Uh, that type of slavery was a type of slavery the world had never seen before.
And they lost
It,
their identities over a generation or two.
yeah, I mean, over the course of several hundred years. I mean,
Okay.
just, you know, it was a really, and the Muslim world didn't really have a response. The Muslim world, didn't really come to the aid or the rescue.
Hmm.
There wasn't really a response to that, except for in West Africa, there were. And, our brother Mustafa Briggs, Allah preserve him, and Dr. Rudolph Ware. I know that you guys have not seen eye to eye about politics, but the two of them have done a lot of just work in introducing that the history of the resistance to the Western slavery in West Africa.
Hmm.
But the broader Muslim world didn't come to the aid of African people that were taken into that system. So when Master Farad shows up in the 30s in Detroit,
And he's this really mysterious figure. People think he's an Indian or West Indian, or they don't even know what he is, right? Like we still don't know who this guy was.
well, there are a few different kind of narratives that people feel
Hmm.
really strongly about, you know, and I don't feel like I don't feel like it's for me to necessarily weigh in on that, but mysterious. But
Yeah.
everybody knows this person is mysterious, and he was only among that community for about 3, 4 years, from 1930 to 1933, 34.
And did he make
During
those claims about himself that they say that he was God incarnate or he was a messenger or something? Did he say that?
So he said a number of things, and you got to keep in mind. So he's talking to people, for example, Elijah Muhammad had a third grade education in Sandersville, Georgia in the early
Mhm.
1900s as a black man. So it's like his understanding is really rooted in the Bible. Elijah Muhammad, who is Elijah Poole, and his wife Clara Evans, Allah have mercy on them,
Mhm.
uh, they were Bible people, and most of Black America were people that were rooted in.
Yeah.
It's not even the same Christianity. Like the enslaved people were given a slave Bible. Like
Mhm.
they didn't have the same Christianity that white folks had. There was a very specific indoctrination program that went on for centuries. And so when this thing that Farad called Islam was presented to them, it had a lot. It really mirrored in a lot of ways Christianity. So it's not clear whether or not he directly made the claim.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It may be that that was Elijah Muhammad's understanding of him after he left.
Okay.
that, okay, he was the Messiah. He was, what they may have understood to be like the second
Yeah.
coming of Christ. Minister Farrakhan's group calls him the Mahdi, which is like from a traditional Islamic standpoint, that's not how that would be understood. But so this person is just there, and he introduces this concept, and then he disappears. And so Elijah Muhammad had to flee for a while because there was some disagreement over who would be the leader, and then he goes to prison. So the Nation of Islam, a lot of the men in the Nation of Islam, the same, we know that Muhammad Ali resisted the draft in Vietnam. Allah have mercy on him. But a lot of the ministers and the men in the Nation of Islam resisted the draft. They wouldn't fight for America.
Wow.
And Elijah Muhammad actually went to prison. I think he wouldn't, there was one of the early wars that he wouldn't fight. Maybe Korea. I'm not sure about that. I believe, I'm not sure actually. Maybe it was World War II, but he resisted the draft. And so he went to prison for a while. And so his wife, Clara Muhammad, actually held the community together for a long time. And so the two of them built the Nation of Islam, and it was relatively small until Malcolm. Allah have mercy on him. When Malcolm comes in, then Malcolm is the one who received the message from his blood brother in prison, and sisters, like his brothers and sisters, are becoming joining this group. And so he comes out and he's like, "Why aren't we giving this message to the world?" So he starts recruiting people in large numbers and speaking, and really has a lot to do with the movement getting big. So during all this time, Elijah Muhammad's children have the unique distinction in that community. So that community, the first experience or the original Nation of Islam, the first resurrection, some call it, was from 1930 to 1975.
Hmm.
Elijah Muhammad passed away in 1975. And so during that time, when he was the leader, they were taught mostly from the Bible.
Hmm.
They also did have English translations of the Quran, and they also had lessons or like conversations, written conversations between Elijah Muhammad and Master Farad. This is what the doctrine and practices came from. The Elijah Muhammad's children, though, were taught Arabic. And so, two of them in particular, Akbar Muhammad and Wallace Muhammad. Akbar Muhammad ended up going to study at Al Azhar. Wallace Muhammad never studied anywhere, Imam Warisdi Muhammad. But from reading Arabic and from having this kind of introduction, just reading for himself, he's reading the Quran and the Sirah and the Hadith and things like that. And he's saying the things that my father is saying is not what's in these pages.
Hmm.
And so Imam Warthi Muhammad actually went to prison also for resisting the draft in Sandstone, Minnesota. And during that time, he's away from what they call the royal family. He's away from kind of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and he's on his own. And he says it was in that place that Allah made it known to him, like you have to you have to learn and teach and eventually bring the community into Islamic orthodoxy, like the Islam that you're finding in the Quran.
Hmm.
And so he was self-taught. He never studied, traditionally, but just from the Arabic that he knew and from reading those sources, he became really committed to this. And so even while he was still in the Nation of Islam, when he got up to teach, he would teach traditional Islam.
Hmm.
So he never taught that Allah was a man. Didn't say that his father was a messenger that Elijah Muhammad was a messenger, nothing like that. He was just teaching Islam.
Hmm.
And people would complain about him to Elijah Muhammad. And he actually was excommunicated from the Nation of Islam, I think twice.
By
And
his
when
own dad.
Malcolm, by his father, yeah. And I
Wow.
mean, he was put out and he had to go, figure out how to support his family and everything. Imam Muhammad was an incredible Zahid, incredible Zahid. So being a member of that kind of royal family entitled him to a life of luxury. And over and over again, he just walked away from it because he didn't believe that the doctrine was true. And it's just not what he was interested in. So when Malcolm X, rahimahullah, when he just started to have problems, disagreements with Elijah Muhammad, he went to Wallace, to Imam Warthi Muhammad. This is in the mid 60s. And he says, he's been hearing some things about Elijah Muhammad had had secret marriages with his secretaries and had babies and things like that. And so Imam Muhammad said, yeah, that's true. And as the gulf grew between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad, it was Imam Warthi Muhammad who told him, you should embrace traditional Islam. You should join the Sunni Muslim world. That should become your platform. You're bigger than America. And so when Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, he actually started two organizations. One was called the Organization for African American Unity, that was a political group. One called American Muslim Mission, that was the religious group. And he thought that Wallace, Imam Muhammad, was going to leave his father with him and run the religious organization. And Malcolm actually felt a little betrayed when Wallace said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to
Hmm.
stay in the Nation of Islam. And he stayed for 10 more years until his father died. And when his father died, Imam Muhammad became the leader of the Nation of Islam. Everybody, there's videos you can watch on YouTube. Everybody, including Minister Farrakhan, swore their fidelity, like their allegiance to him, almost like gave almost like a public type of bay'ah almost.
Hmm.
Um, and within a period of, so that's 1975. By 1977, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of Black Americans who identified as Muslim, but they believed things that would, according to, Sunni
Yeah.
scholars, whether they're Athari, Ashari, Maturidi, modern, Wahhabi, it would put them outside of Islam,
Right.
um, according to the scholars of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And so within 2 years, he corrected that. Within 2 years, also like orthopraxy and orthodoxy, like they made salat, they called the adhan, they had Jumu'ah, they made wudu, you know. And so Elijah Muhammad dies in 75. In 1977, Imam W.D. Muhammad, rahimahullah, brings a group of new Black Sunni imams on Hajj. And they made a group with a big group of people, maybe 150 people or something, made Hajj. And that was the kind of the marker that this is a Sunni group that's accepted by the world of Islam, that we've joined Sunni orthodoxy.
Hmm.
And so this is the largest mass conversion to Sunni traditional Islam, and it's amongst Americans. But and it's just not really even known. So Imam Muhammad was Warithudi Muhammad rahimahullah was largely unknown, largely misunderstood, largely unacknowledged, and that community in general. And as a white kid who was raised in Black families and Black communities and got to experience a lot of like intimate life on both sides of the fence and tracks, it's like, man, if that had been white people, if like Sheikh Abdul Qadir Sufi's group had been hundreds of thousands of people,
Yeah.
that would be the headline of the Muslim world. What, like Americans are embracing Islam. Let's go
Yeah.
help them and teach them and fund them and join them and you know, but because the world just kind of the non-black world just kind of has this, regardless of whatever we say about colonialism, the non-black world kind of agrees that black people aren't that important and or valuable,
Hmm.
and so the fact that Allah gave them his religion I mean, we've got four generations of like indigenous born American Muslims, families. And it's interesting that Allah says in the Quran, gives a warning to the Muslims, if you don't honor this guidance I've given you, I can give it to somebody else
Yeah.
and they will love me and I'll love them and they won't fear the criticism of criticizers. And from the way that where I sit, it appears as though that has happened in the last, 100 years. Um, and it's Black Americans. And, you think about the great impact that that community has culturally on the world. I
Hmm.
think about like when Donald Trump got elected the first time. Saturday Night Live was Dave Chappelle and Tribe Called Quest. And they're all Muslim. And like that's who America is looking at, like, please help us make sense of this moment.
Yeah.
Like so much of America is like, what do we do? And this might choke me up a little bit because I'm friends with Dave and like it's just very beautiful. But like America is looking to the people that have had the worst of America. There's nothing that happens in that the empire does that wasn't done first to Black people and worse. And then it gets Once it gets, developed with black people as the target, then it gets exported to other people, and then everyone else starts to experience it. And so for America to say, please, Dave Chappelle, please, Q-Tip from Tribe Called Quest, whose name is Kamal, please, Ali Shaheed Muhammad, who's a DJ for Tribe Called Quest, please, Busta Rhymes, who identifies as a five percenter. The whole crew, they're all Muslim. Fife Dog is the only guy who wasn't Muslim, I don't think, but his name was Malik. His name was Malik. So he
Hmm.
had a Muslim name. It's all black Muslims making America feel okay. Like it's gonna be okay.
Hmm.
Trust us. We know this isn't the worst it's ever been. Like we can show you how to, and everybody's Muslim. And we just have this feeling that like, well, you know, we're looking at Tucker Carlson, like, well, he says nice things about Islam. You know what I mean? And like, meanwhile, uh, we've got these people who have the ears and hearts and hopes
Hmm.
of the world who are Muslim. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
But they're not the skin color that we want them to be or something.
yeah, just we don't really care about them too much.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm laughing about it, but it's actually, it's infuriating, and it's a tremendous barrier because I grew up in that community for 20 years and I still am in that community. I still identify with it, but it's like to go and study outside of that community is a really scary thing. To me, it felt like, man, I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to lose my connection with, because I'm basically entering a world that, for the most part, not on an individual basis, but in terms of institutions and communities and things like that, just didn't care about the fact that Allah gave His religion to hundreds of thousands of people that have gone through the worst of all of this. So it's like, that part is really challenging. It's really difficult.
I mean, we can just drop some honorable mentions here to some of the, I think, early pioneering figures who reached out to the black community. People like Sheikh Hassan Sise of the Tijaniya, who sort of reached out and had an early black Muslim community, and then
Yeah.
the Muslims of
Yeah,
America as
man.
well under Sayyid Mubarak Ali Shah Jilani on the East Coast. But it was very limited. The number of people that reached out to the black community was very limited.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I'm often reminded that like blanket statements are like you're always going to in turn deny someone that did that. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that.
No, no, no.
But
I wasn't. Yeah,
just
I
being
wasn't
in these
correcting
communities,
you.
it
But
just
yeah,
kind of felt like, well, no one really cares that we're over here just completely alone.
yeah.
Uh, just trying to figure it out. And then to study in the traditional Islamic world is I can only speak from my own personal experience, but so for me, it started like when Imam Din Muhammad passed away, rahimahullah, I had a kind of spiritual low, and I was touring all the time. I was the only Muslim
How
in
old were
every
you when he
word.
passed away?
I was like 30.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean that was the height of my career. So I'm like on the
Yeah.
main stage at Coachella and on Conan O'Brien and all this stuff, and I'm the only guy in every setting that's not drinking, that's, you know what I mean? Like I'm the
Mhm.
only practicing Muslim wherever I go. And there was years that I wasn't connected to the community and it was really rough. And so I made Hajj, alhamdulillah. Amir Suleiman, a great poet, the greatest poet in the English language, is a member of this community, who has a Grammy nomination, by the way. Um, and he's actually a muqaddam for the Tijaniya, an amazing person. He grew up in Clara Muhammad schools,
Mhm.
one of the most amazing human beings I've ever been around. That I just from my witnessing of him, not that I know anything, but like I believe that he's a very special person with God. And I just see his effect and his impact on people. Dave Chappelle says when Amir Suleiman does a poem, it changes the weather.
Wow.
And so, like, he'll be on stage and they'll be like, Amir is here. And you'll just hear Dave go, oh man, Amir's gonna come in here and change the weather.
Yeah.
So he'll be like, go up there and do what you do. And yeah, man. So Amir told me you have to make Hajj, and he said pay spe At this time, I'm still deeply entrenched in Imam Worthy Muhammad's community and have been scared to dabble outside. Amir already has. So he's being really careful, but he says, really pay special attention to visiting the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, I don't, what does that mean? Like, I had not been introduced to like the idea of ziyarah. Like
Hmm.
to me, it's like I'm gonna go to the masjid. Oh, and he's buried there. Amazing. But like visiting him, like that's a new idea to me. So just even that language was planting a
Yeah.
little seed. And when I came back, I said, oh, I have to keep studying. So I figured, okay, I'll try Zaytuna because I trusted Imam Zaid. Everyone trusts Imam Zaid.
Mashallah.
And
I've never heard
and I
anything except good about him, mashallah. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, the people that I believe are very, very special people with Allah that don't talk like this, they say the highest things about Imam Zaid.
Hmm.
Like I've heard my own teachers that I've never heard them say anything like this, but I mean, the best things that people like that can say about other people, they say that about Imam Zaid. I
Mashallah.
really pray Allah preserve him, and it's
Ameen.
like the fact that we get to know him and the fact that, we get to hug him and look in his eyes and he knows our names and we can text him and it's really remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Zaytuna and that kind of went. But I mean, even at Zaytuna, I felt like a traitor. I was like, this is,
Why was that?
because it's like I'm in a place where like these people, this is the feeling I had. These people don't care about us. They don't care about the aunties and uncles. There are people that made a way for me to be Muslim. My ancestors enslaved their ancestors. When the son of, was it Abu Jahl or Abu Lahab? One of the sons comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, "Will you accept me? Like, can I join your religion?" And one of the riwayahs says the Prophet ﷺ said, "I always knew your father had good in him." And this is like after they
Wow.
threw a party when his children died, and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the way that the Black Muslim community is. Like any white person that's become Muslim, especially if you're in a Black masjid, it's like, man, they hug you and pick you up for Fajr and they'll marry their daughters to you. And it's like complete embrace. It's one of the most amazing, it's a miracle. It's a true miracle. There's like a communal wilaya there that's just like all we ever wanted was good and truth.
Mhm.
So if we can just be good together, just don't worry about it. We'll all just be Muslim and it's fine. We're all
SubhanAllah.
gonna make wudu together. We're gonna, you know what I mean? We're gonna teach you how to make istinja. You know what I mean? It's like we're gonna be pretty close. You know what I mean? We're gonna wash each other when we die.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna, slaughter meat by hand and eat each other's hand slaughtered meats and all kind of,
Yeah.
it's a revolutionary thing in American life. And so yeah, alhamdulillah.
So you mentioned that you were part of Zaytuna for some time. You went to study there,
I
and
just did their summer Arabic
we did
program.
a program. Okay.
Yeah. But that's where I met a lot of the people that were able to kind of help me make that transition. So
Yeah.
people like Imam Dawood Yassin, people like I mean Imam Zaid is the main one, of course, but then Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamid Ali, we mentioned before we started recording that he was my first Maliki fiqh teacher.
Yeah.
Um, you know, alhamdulillah, and then it just kept growing from there.
You never felt a pressure whenever you moved. So the first major shift, obviously, into Islam, and then from Islam to later on to the traditional kind of community and stuff. Did you ever feel like you had to prove that you're now authentic, that you are on board? Do you think people looked at you a certain way and expected certain things, or was it all natural? Did it all move like really smoothly?
So it's no different than any other part of my life. So like
Yeah.
my parents are white. A lot of people, because I'm albino, and also the way that I've been raised now, like the culture, how I am culturally and stuff, people
Yeah.
think I'm black. Um, I'm Muslim, but I'm a convert. Legally blind, but I'm not all the way blind. I don't know. I never am actually completely native anywhere, it feels like.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's no different than anywhere else. But I will say that like when I went to that masjid in North Minneapolis called Masjid Anur, We were meeting in a little house at that time. One of the people that, one of the foundational people in that community for a lifetime has been a woman by the name of Arlene Elamine.
Mhm.
She was a secretary in the Nation of Islam. She's Message to the Black Man, which is Elijah Muhammad's kind of like seminal book. She's thanked in that book. She's the one that taught me the bean pie recipe. She hired me. I was in a full-time employee at the masjid. I was one of the imams there. I gave the first khutbah when we actually built a masjid.
Wow.
Um, I mean, from day one, there's times where my own mother put me out of the house, and she was just like, I'm your mom, I'm your mother."
Wow.
And she is a mother to me. My mother passed, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's like I've never been deprived of anything. I mean, that community, I was just part of the community from day one. Now,
Wow.
I had to do all the same stuff everybody else had to do.
Yeah.
So like there's times where we confronted drug dealers and they pulled guns on us, and I had to be there for that like everybody else did.
Hmm.
It's not like I could be like, well, you guys, I'm actually you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we all did that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I married a woman from Gary, Indiana, and had a 10-year marriage that ended in divorce. Got married at the masjid, got divorced at the masjid, got assaulted at the masjid, I mean,
Yeah.
like I've really genuinely lived the life. And so there's no, I participated. My participation was the ticket. And you know, anybody that is part of a Black community and is really genuinely part of that community, especially like Muslim community, will tell you that that's how it is. There's no different standards. You don't have to prove yourself.
They're some of the most welcoming, loving people that you can ever
Yeah.
meet. Yeah.
And I mean, the same is not true for them. Like when they go, like, I mean, there's brothers that have risked their life and limb to be Muslim who like, you know, their pronunciation, they might say Assalamu alaikum, or they
Mhm.
might say Salaikum, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Uh, there are people that won't return their salams, or people that look at them
Billah.
crazy, or
That's
people that
horrible.
like, I mean, the there's an accounting that I pray that Allah has mercy on the non-Black Muslim world, but it's something for the Muslim world, especially in the West, to really deeply consider. Allah gave his religion to somebody under your nose, and you didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't have much to do with it, not anything, but you didn't have much to do with it. Allah did this completely with them, that like they weren't brought in by a traditional dawah, and like it wasn't the none of the groups, none of the madhahib, none of the organizations. Allah invited these people directly to Islam, and there's generations and families of very, very devout, very spiritual, very pious, and in some cases very knowledgeable Muslims.
Hmm.
Muslim world, to be asked, that may be a tough question.
Yeah.
What did you do when I sent my religion, when I invited people directly to my religion and you were among them? And it's going to be a tough one.
SubhanAllah.
I'm free from that. That's alhamdulillah, Allah put me in that community, but there's going to be some questions. There may be some questions to be answered
Yeah.
on Yom Al-Qiyamah vis-a-vis that.
Do you see Islam in the Black American community as something that's continuous into the past, or has there been reinventions along the way? Have there been?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely have been. Yeah,
Hmm.
there definitely have been. So it's interesting, there's like this overuse of the word bid'ah,
Hmm.
but when we have these like things that like, whoa, that's not from Islam at all. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So if somebody says, well, like, oh, I don't want to start throwing out issues, but like somebody will say like, oh, you do this thing and that's bid'ah. In the Nation of Islam, there are beliefs that are like that's what's meant when bid'ah, you know what I mean, and
Hmm.
certain practices and things like that. So that's one. But then, that's a community that even the Nation of Islam under Minister Farrakhan, there is one of Elijah Muhammad's great grandchildren is a man by the name of Imam. His name is Sultan Rahman Muhammad.
Hmm.
And he studied in Syria. He studied in Damascus at Abi Nur. And he is considered the national imam of the Nation of Islam. And there's another brother too. His name is escaping me. I don't mean to disrespect him, but there are two who teach Salat. They teach Arabic. They do within the Nation of Islam. So it's hard to pin down exactly like where things are at now.
Interesting. Okay.
There are times where Minister Farrakhan will, kind of be hinting to like we're going towards something more traditional, and then there are times where he'll say, God as a man, and it's just like, okay,
Right.
we're back to square one with that. And I love the brothers in it. I love the nation of the people of the Nation of Islam. They're very, very sincere people, and I don't
What do you think
because
their
I
numbers
understand
are
their
like?
context.
Hmm.
Sorry.
What do you think their numbers are like these days? Are they in the hundreds of thousands still?
The active, actual enlisted members of the Nation of Islam, the numbers wise, it isn't what it used to be.
Okay.
But even with that being the case, I mean, still profound impact on the culture. People like, in Black America, if Minister Nuri Muhammad in Indianapolis, if he weighs in on something, it really matters. And if Minister Farrakhan says something, I mean, that holds tremendous weight. You think about like when we were young, like the Million Man March and things like that. Um, but so even within that movement, there's more and more Islamic literacy. And so the way that I view them is like Allah knows like where they're at and specifically
Hmm.
because even though those early lessons are understood in different ways by different people and things like that, like I said, there's really no getting around the fact that like on paper, the words that are being said, the scholars of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah would say this is outside the realm of Islam.
Right. And the most
Uh,
distant is the five percenters. They're really the most extreme kind of belief system.
Mm, well, the five percenters are, I would say, something of like literalists within that. So there was, and there's been even movement and shifting within those worlds and those communities. Um, but that was a movement that came out of the Nation of Islam. There was a person by the name of Clarence 13X who was a student of, he was a follower of Elijah Muhammad, a student of Malcolm X in Harlem, who left the Nation of Islam. Some that were there say he got put out because they would excommunicate people. They had their own like Sharia courts. They had their own. I mean, the Nation of Islam had the largest non-mainstream media outlet in a newspaper called Muhammad Speaks. They
Hmm.
had the first network of religious private schools that were called Muhammad's University of Islam. And then the name was changed to Clara Muhammad Schools. They had a nationwide chain of grocery stores, of butchers, of dry cleaners, of, basically providing the basic needs for people, bakeries, things like that. And
Hmm.
they were called things like Salam Restaurant or like they would be called YOUR, Your Muslim Bakery. And these existed all, there was farmland, there was international trade, import and export, fish brought from Peru, I believe, like in large quantities, international trade. It was a extremely, and also an independent security organization. Every man was treated to be security for the community, and
Wow.
every woman was treated to be, um, they call general civilization courses. So like how to homeschool, how to raise children, how to keep a home, things like that. I mean, it was really tremendous. And everywhere Muslims went, they were defended by their own people. Like we see these videos of people running up on people making salad and yelling at them and things like that. Not in the Black community, that's not going to happen.
Hmm.
And they never had guns, they never had weapons. It was all like people were trained in martial arts. You know, a lot of this idea of like masculinity and things like that. The Nation of Islam has been doing that for decades with men.
Hmm.
And so
But a
all
wholesome
of
kind of
the
version of it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so there has been a shift and things like that in these different communities. But then even with Imam Warithuddin Muhammad, rahimahullah, when he had like brought the majority of that community in line with Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it still is very culturally black, which is what Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah and others are talking about, Islam and the cultural imperative.
Yeah.
You have to build a culture. If Islam is really going to take root, you have to build a culture that's doable, livable, that feels like the best of who we are, plus the authentically Muslim. And I
Hmm.
mean, what has developed over the last like 100 years is that. I mean, it's really profound that I mean, there's entire traditions and Black Muslims going roller skating together on Eid and like
Hmm.
going to pancake houses and things, even Muslim foods like bean pie and fish and
Yeah.
spaghetti and bean soup and like all of this stuff that comes from that tradition. It's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the followers of Imam Wahdi Muhammad, rahimahullah, considered him to be either the mujaddid for his century or at least a mujaddid. So when you talk about like
Hmm.
new developments, there's bid'ah and then there's tajdeed. And so I think anybody that looks at it, Dr. Sherman Jackson is way more qualified to talk about all this than I am.
Is he from that community?
Yes and no. So he converted in a mosque, I believe, that was part of Imam Muhammad's community, but he wasn't. That's not where he was. Imam Zaid Shakir did as well.
Hmm.
Imam Siraj Wahhaj was part of that community and left it pretty early.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, a lot of those imams have had, their connections. But no, Dr. Jackson's not part of that community directly. But I mean, he's part of the broader, Black American Muslim
Yeah.
experience. But yeah, but those groups have developed, genuine culture that that is it is a tajdeed, and it's like this is the foundational stuff. And just with the relationship to things like comedy and hip hop and
Chappelle is obviously Muslim, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we know Chappelle very well, and everybody's got their own kind of journey with Islam, but yeah, Chappelle is a Muslim. His children are Muslim. There's people in his family that are young hufad of Quran and people
Inshallah.
that have studied and absolutely. And you just think like these are the people that have the ears of the West in really tremendous ways.
Yeah.
And I just see so many people being so happy that someone like Tucker Carlson, I don't know, I keep going back to Tucker Carlson, but
Mhm.
Tucker Carlson and others, Candace Owens and people like that. And it's like, okay, we should make inroads with whoever seems to be open.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've got these like these very tremendous, very impactful
Gems.
cultural figures,
Yeah.
gems.
Yeah.
I mean, Yasin Bey Most Def is one of the most like we're very, very dear friends. He's one of the most. I mean, I've prayed all over the world with all kind of people. Yasin Bey is a very dedicated Muslim. Like there, everything in this man's life is halal. That I mean, I've spent a lot of personal time with him. I know his family. That I've prayed with our teachers. I prayed at the beginning of this past Ramadan. I went and visited him for a couple days, and we were in his home, and so he was leading the. It was just he and I leading the prayer. His salat changed how I pray.
Wow.
There's something about like the way that he is in ruku' and sajda in particular that I really can't put, but it's like, first of all, he can't wait to make salat. Like he
Wow.
can't wait. Like it's just like I can't wait to get a break from the dunya. And I told him, I said, man, making sujood behind you feels like attempting to like cuddle with God. You know what I mean? It's just that's not a nice way to say it, but but I mean these are people that are amongst us,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of them, and a number of them are aging, and people are passing away. And Imam Talib Abdul Rashid in Harlem, Allah have mercy on him, he just passed away a couple months ago.
Hmm.
Um, when Malcolm became a Sunni Muslim,
Was Imam
he
Jamal Al-Amin from that community too?
yes, no, he was not.
Okay.
No, he had his own path. But I mean, from the Black Muslim Sunni community, yeah. Imam Talib Abdul Rashid was his teacher was a man that went by Alama Sheikh Tawfiq
Hmm.
from Harlem. uh, Alama Sheikh Tawfiq was when Malcolm went to visit Egypt. Al Azhar granted him a certain number of scholarships. They said, like, send us people that are with you, and and this man, Alama Sheikh Tawfiq, was one of those that went and studied. He
Hmm.
came back first to Brooklyn, and then they moved their mosque to Harlem. It's called the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood. And when Malcolm was martyred, rahimahullah, um, he's the one that taught Malcolm's children Islam. And so
Wow.
this man, Sheikh Alama Tawfiq, rahimahullah, he was the teacher of Imam Talib Abdul Rashid in Harlem, who just passed away.
Wow.
So, these aren't just stories. These
Yeah.
are people that are living and going about life and serving. Like they're serving. These are people that are like, you know, like I said, confronting drug dealers and offering them careers in construction. These are people that are, helping people to get clean and sober. These are people that are, chaplains in colleges, universities, prisons, mental health workers. The, yeah, it's a treasure like that's right under most of our noses.
It's
And
crazy.
we just kind of talk about Islam and the West. We talk about the West and it's right there. And
Yeah.
it's such a missing part of the worldview it's so hard for me to conceive of, other than the fact that from the time I was really young, because of the people that took care of me, I'm just like, oh, the way that my first division in the world of like you're either on this side or that side is like there's people who care about Black people
Hmm.
and everybody else.
Wow.
And most Muslims, unfortunately, are in the everybody else category. Because once you care about them and start to see them, it's like they're very, very central in the human story.
Right.
And in the story of Islam in this time. You know what I mean? You think about like the fact that basically when the caliphate fell, I'm in Istanbul. So when the caliphate fell, that was the time that, America, there's like this large group of people converted to Islam in
Hmm.
America. And kind of were building their own like communal structures and like things that the Muslim community could not conceive of now.
Right.
You know what I mean? The fact of having that level of like, what if we had like one private school system for all Muslim kids across America? It happened, and it was called Muhammad's University of Islam, and Muslims moved here, and like, I don't know how I don't know how they missed each other. I
Yeah.
wasn't there, but I just know that in the 90s, it's like, we would go to Eid with everybody when the Eid was still all together, and people just kind of treated us like we were like, oh, that's nice, they're here.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's crazy that identitarian kind of clumping of people. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that me and you have talked about. Like, you know what I mean? Like the experience of being in America and having that particular perspective is not always the same as folks that didn't grow up like that.
Yeah. And then there's been attempts in America now to third space and to try to kind of see new models of integration of new Muslims and young Muslims and stuff into sacred space. But I don't think that they're all equally as useful as what you just mentioned, what the Black community did and how they worked it out.
Yeah, so like in my so I was around like probably one of the most formative third spaces. I was like very close to it for a good period of time. And the way that I saw it then and see it now is like that's an attempt to introduce what the Black community has always done and continues to do naturally to the rest of the Muslim community,
Hmm.
which is interesting because it's like, okay, there's probably something valuable in that. But it's like, or we could just go to Black mosques too. Like we could, like we could do that. That's something we can
It's
do.
an easier and cheaper
Like you could just
option.
go to the Black, you could just take your expensive, like, you know what I mean, your
Yeah.
disposable income to buy a $300 bottle of oud, a bespoke suit, um, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
seven
Just go to a
thousand
Black
dollar
masjid.
retreat. You could just take all that to the Black masjid. You could,
Yeah.
you could, you can, um, you know, and not to just, uh,
Yeah, you're not
you
knocking
know,
these guys, but like you kind of,
no,
yeah.
no, it is really important. Like I think the third space thing is really important, you know.
But it has to be done
There's,
well. Yeah.
yeah, and it's, you know, it's challenging. And part of the challenge is that part of the challenge is that it's like such a new thing and the kinks are still being worked out. You know
I'm
what I
really
mean? So,
concerned personally about, you mentioned the expensive retreats and stuff that like, are we paywalling the
yes,
underprivileged classes out of our
not even
fun
underprivileged. Not
Sufi
even,
or even it's just not non-rich people, basically. Like,
Tahiti, yes, absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Like, man, one of my dearest friends in the world is I don't want to, but I mean, one of my dearest friends in the world is somebody who is extremely unique and beautiful and gifted and talented and all this kind of stuff. And there's a retreat coming up, and I mean, he's just criminally underpaid for what he does. Like, he's a community public servant,
yeah,
and he's just like, man, all the teachers are going to be together. He is also a teacher in his own right.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You know, there's certain people that's like they haven't met the sheikh yet, and it's like, oh, when this person meets the sheikh might make him a sheikh, or like he might become a muqaddam, or he might be a, you know, but like he can't afford to meet the sheikh, and he can't afford to be in at the retreat.
right,
I'm not, never mind like, you know, underserved. I mean, just regular people can't go to this stuff.
yeah.
You know, it's,
It's criminal. It's not right. It's
and
really
the
not right.
teachers don't like it.
Yeah,
You know, the teachers don't like it. The teachers want to, you know, any like authentic teacher, like they want everybody to be able to come in here.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've never paid for one of those retreats. Sometimes they'd be like, you know, can you come do spoken word? I'm like, I'm not a spoken word artist, but whatever gets me and my family to the retreat without, because
Dang.
I can't pay the thousands of dollars
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I just can't afford to do that all the time. So
I
yeah, so I mean, you know, that we're still working it out.
yeah, yeah. Any parting words for us? It was really good talking to you, man. And I've gone over the 1 hour thing that I've promised you. I was going to try and keep it to 1 hour, but it was really good, man. And definitely want to do more of these. But do you want to leave us with like a last word about what we spoke about and maybe some parting
Um,
advice?
Well, just that, I mean, first of all, like I talked a lot and, you know, I really do appreciate you pointing out that there have been people and movements and groups that have done what I'm saying hasn't been done in a large. And so anytime we generalize, we end up lying about people or actually, you know, overlooking people that did great things. And so, you know, for any of those that I left out, I ask a lot to forgive me and the people to forgive me. Um, and then also, I would just say to Black people in the audience, it's like anytime we start speaking about something that others are understand better than we do, it's like we owe an apology there. A
Hmm.
lot of times for things that we might not even notice. But you know, it's one of the companions. I won't say their name. One of the companions was in an argument with Sayyidina Bilal, and there's a riwayah that says that he basically used a racial slur with him that was related to his blackness.
Hmm.
And the Prophet said, "You're the son of a black woman."
Hmm.
And the Prophet ﷺ said, "You still have too much jahiliyyah in you."
Wow.
So the Prophet ﷺ identified anti-blackness specifically as an element of jahiliyyah.
Right.
Like it's in the record. The Prophet ﷺ entered it into the record. He also, this is something that I heard Sheikh Hamza Yusuf say, and I've never like checked it, but I think it's an interesting way to look at it. He says that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the first person in recorded history to make specific statements that were anti-racist.
Wow.
That you know, in those final sermons, there's no, you know, there's no superiority of black over white and Arab over non-Arab and vice versa. So I mean, these are things that are uh, something that Dr. Sherman Jackson says. He said at the time that the Prophet ﷺ arrives in Mecca saying there's no God but Allah, that was the most revolutionary thing that a person could say
Yeah.
in their culture. Now, if you say to somebody, you'd walk up to someone on the street and you say, "Hey, there's only one God. Everybody was created by the same God. There's only one God. Any other people's individual gods, those aren't there's one God." That's not, it seems like it's not that revolutionary. So, Dr. Jackson said something to the effect of, did La ilaha illallah become less revolutionary, or is it that we failed to identify the idols of our time?
Mhm.
And to look at the modern period, and whether we want to call the domination of the West, we can call it the West. We can call it post-modernity. We can talk about that colonialism and things like that. At the at the root and at the heart of all of this is a racialized hierarchy of white supremacy, which is like whiteness as a creation, not just European people, not just people of a certain like phenotype or skin tone, because there's always been expansion and contraction of like what white actually means. So
Mhm.
we're not talking about even elevating certain ethnicities, because it's also part of our deen that like if somebody is Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad should feel good about being, British or English, however he identifies. He should feel good about that. Um, but the idea and the concept of whiteness is not that. It's something very different. And and the specific way that it enters into the world is, in my estimation, is really at the heart of the end of time. And so like understanding like what we're up against in these end times, the
Yeah.
idea of white supremacy, the idea of whiteness and then white supremacy, and then the idea of people buying into white supremacy and whiteness so deeply that when you reject that, it starts to be, well, like, okay, maybe every identity can be seen as a construct now.
Hmm.
If whiteness isn't real, and like whiteness is the realest thing in the development of the modern world, is very, very is really at the core of the development of the modern world.
Even for like
Uh,
the ethno-supremacist Zionist state of Israel, yeah,
Absolutely.
they're Eastern European white people who came to the
It's
Middle East.
white.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
white. I'm saying like there's Christianity. I'm saying so like admittedly like this is my worldview. This is my worldview that I had before I was Muslim. Uh, there's Christianity, and Christianity was not a white religion. When it became a white religion, then we have the phenomenon of the Crusades and so and so, so and so. The,
Mhm.
the Ethiopians didn't do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
The Coptic
then
Christians of Egypt were not crusading around. Yeah.
you know what I mean? And the Arab cousins, you know what I mean, are not the ones that are doing the Zionist state. Like the Zionist project, to me, I consider it just part of whiteness.
Hmm.
Like it's a very and part of white supremacy, you know what I mean? Like the belief of white supremacy.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a scholar, and I'm a rapper, so like nobody has to listen to me. But it's worth considering, it's worth considering what does it mean that Allah has distinguished Black American people with being the community that right in the heart and at the midst of all of this that have experienced the worst of, this modern system, this modern world,
And still
intellectually,
held
spiritually,
fast.
and still created beauty that the whole, and then also culturally,
Yeah.
I think there's something tied in there with the idea that we say music is haram, as a blanket statement, when
I think it's a
rap music.
problematic blanket statement to make.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, hip hop, for example, we say music, what do we mean? Hip hop is drums with rhythmic spoken words over the top of with it. Those are like the arcane, those are the pillars of what hip hop is at its essence, is drums and poetry. Uh, and it already is in love with Islam, and it already has the ears of. So like what would happen if we just stop with the blanket statement and say, okay, what if Yasin Bey didn't have to get a record deal? Or what if Amir Suleiman didn't have to write for TV shows? in order to pay to feed his family. And Amir Suleiman feeds many families. But if what if the Muslim world said, we have a black Muslim poet who was nominated for a Grammy and it had nothing to do with us? At least one. He might have been nominated for two. What if Amir Suleiman just had a salary from the
Hmm.
Muslim world? And like in the midst of all of this, Amir Suleiman has been writing an English language epic poem for the Prophet Muhammad SAW,
I saw.
the first of its kind in the English language. It's called The Lover, the Love, and the Beloved.
Wow.
And how are we responding to that? You know what I mean? How are we respond like, Dave Chappelle just got a lot of criticism because he went and performed in the Kingdom. Okay, our community could make sure that Chappelle doesn't have to worry about any of that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Doesn't, Netflix or whatever else. Like, and so many others, like so many others, that are in this world. What if our community, instead of trying to, buddy up to, either extreme left-wing people that like there's going to be deep, and extreme right-wing people, both of them inclined towards us from time to time,
Yeah.
but the black man in America has the mic and has had the mic for the entire time that the modern world's been the modern world.
Yeah.
And Allah gave them his religion, and they still are on the mic. So what's possible there if we just we're in the category of people that care about Black people and see them as central to the human story?
I think that's a perfect mic drop to end this podcast on. Beautiful. It was
Forgive me for talking so much.
no man, I had a great time. I love you for the sake of Allah and I'm
I
just
love you
really
back,
honored
man.
to yeah,
I love you
thank
since I first saw you show up on my timeline. That's why I reached out to you. I was like, oh man, I
you.
love this guy.
Alhamdulillah, man. It was really good to have you. And subhanAllah, there are some people you speak to them and you feel like a soul connection immediately, even though we haven't
Yeah,
met in the flesh, inshallah soon.
yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Come to
Thank you so
Istanbul,
much.
please.
Inshallah, hope to maybe come and visit you in Turkey sometime.
That'd be dope.
Inshallah. Take care and let's do more of these, inshallah.
Absolutely. Would love it.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.